Okay, so we're going to be factoring these guys up here, and I'm going to just talk about the signs first, because if you can figure out what the signs are before you figure out what the numbers are, it can help you. For example, if you know that there's a positive and a negative number that you're looking for, it changes the combinations that make sense. So, okay, the first thing to know is that if there was a number before this n, we call that the a. This middle number here, 11, like in 11n, we call it b. And this constant, which is just a number without a variable after it, we call it c. So to factor the first one, n squared plus 11n plus 30, we're looking, let me just get we're looking for a number that two numbers that multiply to 30 in this case, and that add to 11 in this case. So two numbers that multiply to 30, a number here multiplies to 30, and that add to 11. But before I'm just going to write down 30 multiply to 30 and add to 11. But before we work on the numbers, the first thing we do is we write parentheses, and we need to put in the signs in here, plus, minus, minus, minus. So you can memorize it if you want. In this case, n squared plus 11n plus 30 is a plus plus. Here's plus plus, and we know that's going to mean a positive positive. So if you want to memorize it, you can just memorize plus plus means plus plus. Now the first is n squared. The only thing that multiplies into n squared is n and n. Now we need two numbers that multiply to 30 and add to 11. So I'm thinking factors of 30 are 6 and 5 are the ones that come to mind, because 6 times 5 is 30 and 6 plus 5 is 11. So I'm going to put in 6 and 5. And then I'll check using the FOIL method. N squared, n times n is n squared, plus 6n plus 5n is 11n, plus 6 times 5 is 30. So it works out. So that's done. So what we learned there is plus plus gives us plus plus. That's the easiest one to remember. So the next one we're going to do is actually, let's see, minus minus. M squared minus m minus 2. Let me get rid of this up here. So our new challenge is a minus minus. Now you can memorize this, and it's negative times negative gives you a plus and a minus, but there's a reason for that. Well, let me go back to the first one and why plus plus gives us a plus plus. If we have two numbers that, that multiply to a positive 30, that means they're either two positives or two negatives. But then we know that they add to 11. Two numbers that add to 11. So if it were two negatives, it would be a negative number when you add them. So it must be a plus plus. That's our detective work. Okay? So that's why we know that a plus plus equals a plus plus. But now we're on to our next one. Let me erase this. Which is the minus minus. And let's, first of all, I don't want to keep you in suspense, minus minus means you're going to have a plus and a minus where the negative number is bigger. But let's reason that out, okay? So put in our parentheses. We're looking for two numbers, here we are with minus minus, that times to a -2 and add to a -1. For two numbers to end up with a negative, they have to be a positive and a negative. Because a negative and negative multiplied is a positive, positive and a positive multiplied is a positive. So the only way to get a negative is a plus and a minus. So we know they're a plus and a minus as soon as we see that that C is negative. Okay, so we're going to put in plus and minus. But to add to the information, when you added these numbers, it came out as a negative, which means that when you added them, the negative number was bigger. Okay, so if you have minus minus, you have a plus minus here, and the negative number is bigger. So let's see if we can solve this. What numbers multiply to -2? I'm going to say 1 and -2. And when you 1 and -2, and when you add those, you get -1. So those are our numbers. So M, we know the bigger number is negative, so it must be the 2. And here's the 1. And now let's go through it. M squared plus -2m plus 1m, so that leaves us with a -1m. And 1 times -2, that gives us a -2. So that's solved. So that tells us, with our detective work, that if you have a negative, it's going to be a plus negative. And if you want to know something more to help you, it also means that the negative number is bigger. The bigger of the two numbers is going to be the -1. Okay, sorry, it's taking me a while to erase this. So the next possibility we have is, let's look at this one, a negative positive. So x squared minus 13x plus 40. So we're looking for two numbers that multiply to 40. Oops. That multiply to 40 and that add to -13. So it multiplies to a positive, and the only way to get a positive is it with two positives or two negatives. Now, when we added these two numbers, they came out negative. So that tells us it must be this. So minus positive is a negative. So if you lead with a minus and then end with a plus, you're going to end with a minus inside. So let's do this. I'm doing this on video because when somebody teaches this to you in a classroom, it zips by you. It zips by me anyway. Okay, so which one are we on here? We're this one. Okay, so x, we know x here and x here. We know they're both negative numbers and they multiply to 40. So let's see, things that multiply to 40. 2 times 20, and they're both negative. That would give us -22. That's not what we want. 4 and 10. When we multiply -4 and -10, we'd get -40, but we add them, we get -14, not -16. 8 and 5. My miserable 8. 8 and 5, and they're negatives. We know that. So -8 times -5 is 40, and negative 8 plus negative 5, this is good. It's negative 13. So negative 8 and negative 5. So what this tells us is that when you have a negative positive, which is negative positive, you're going to have two negatives. Okay, let me erase the board on pause. Okay, our last one is this one on the bottom, m squared plus 5m minus 36. So we know that the two numbers we're looking for multiply to a negative 36 and add to a positive 5. Well, the only numbers that can multiply to a negative are a positive and a negative. And just to spoil the suspense, a positive and a negative end up with a positive and negative where the negative is smaller. Okay, why? Because you have these two numbers, and when you added them, you ended up with a positive. That means the positive was bigger or the negative was smaller, however you want to look at it. Okay, so we're going to do this last one. We do our parentheses, and they're m's, so it's m here and m here. It's a positive and a negative, so it's a positive and a negative, so we know it's a positive and a negative. And I suggest you always do the signs first. It's just going to help you. Why does it help you? The fact that I have a positive and a negative, and I know that, means that I know that the numbers that I'm getting are not going to, how do I say this? They're going to multiply to a negative 36, but they're going to end up at a 5 by the bigger number canceling out some of the smaller number. So I'm not looking for two numbers that together without the signs give me 36. Only with the signs they give me 36. Let me give you a specific example. So 36, I'm looking for, basically what I'm looking for are two numbers that multiply to 36 that are 5 apart. Because with a positive and a negative, it means they're 5 apart if you end up with 5 when you add them. Okay, so I'm thinking about what numbers multiply to 36 and I get 9 and 4. In this case, they are 5 apart, so that's good. And because you see it's ended up positive, we know that the bigger number is the positive number. And I'll make this a 4. And then we'll FOIL this. M squared, right, gives us m squared, plus 9m minus 4. So you see what I mean? We start with a 9, and we're going to take away 4 to get this 5. So they're 5 apart. And then 9 times negative 4 is negative 36. So we solved this. So what I suggest is that you watch this video and you do lots and lots and lots of problems. If I'm your tutor, I'll probably give you hundreds of them so that it becomes automatic. It's not like this stuff is going to roll off the tip of your tongue the first time you do these problems, but if you do many of them and you do the signs first, always do the signs first, determine the signs first, eventually it'll become automatic. Thank you for your patience.